Fellas, today we're going to be talking about Cronus and XIM, both of which are third-party hardwares you can purchase that offer some benefits. Now, before I have people jump up and say cross accessibility, that's why those things exist, we're going to get into that, okay? Because there are a lot of Destiny players that use Cronus and XIM, and I do have some opinions on this matter. But recently, Epic Games was the one to actually topple that first domino. They announced that they would be banning the use of devices that provide competitive advantages in-game, and they actually singled out the Cronus XIM and the Cronus Max. Now, XIM wasn't actually mentioned here, but both the Cronus and the XIM have surfaced as hot topics over the years, and essentially, they do accomplish similar goals. Exploiting games, aka cheating, to give users a competitive edge. Now first, considering Cronus was the one that was singled out, let's talk about it. Cronus has been around for a very long time. There have been multiple iterations of this product, starting with the Cronus Max V1, and initially, all these devices allowed you to do was to swap controllers between consoles. So if you wanted to play on PlayStation, but wanted to use your Xbox controller, you could. And this same functionality extended to other consoles as well. V2 added extra functionality with script and mod support, meaning you can create macros and remap controls on your input device. And then Cronus Max Plus V3 is where things started to change. Game packs were implemented into the device that allows users to rapid fire, quick scope, drop shots, auto run without any extra inputs. These were essentially preset scripts and software mods that were custom made for several games. Everything was handled by the Cronus. So if you toggled on a setting, whenever you perform that input, X script would run. Now, anyone who used Cronus Max Plus was able to easily access higher level techniques, and in some cases, actions that are impossible for humans to perform with perfect precision like a machine. Now, Collective Minds, the company behind Cronus, didn't stop there. The next upgrade was the Cronus XIM. This product has become an extremely popular tool for cheaters over the last few years, and the mass implementation of anti-cheat systems such as BattleEye and Destiny 2 has further pushed desperate losers to gain an advantage without getting banned. But what does XIM do that the previous iterations don't? Cronus XIM takes everything else its predecessors did and turns it up to 11. Aim assist, anti-recoil, rapid fire, and many more exploits for any loadout in any game. The software includes video tutorials on how to use these cheats, custom layouts for both mouse and keyboard users, and if the mod you want doesn't exist, they also have an entire online library where users can export and upload their custom mods for you to download. Needless to say, guys, Cronus offers a clear advantage. Now, what is XIM? XIM is also another tool that offers aim assist benefits to its users. Now, it's not nearly as egregious as Cronus, but it's still problematic. XIM was designed to allow users to connect mouse and keyboards to consoles. It accomplishes this by translating key presses and mouse movements as controller inputs. The problem with this method is that it also means you get aim assist while using mouse and keyboard, since the game believes you're using a controller, which is, for obvious reasons, unfair. Now, the history of XIM, as it relates to Destiny, is somewhat controversial. Bungie does have a history of supporting, or at least allowing usage of XIMs. In Destiny 1, Dr. Lupo was also known for using mouse and keyboard instead of controller. He would use XIM to remap things like a Wii controller. He even used it to go flawless in Trials of Osiris, which is pretty impressive. And I personally knew some sweat players that were mouse and keyboard players with XIM back inside of D1, and they would absolutely dominate. Big shout out to Laterium. But this isn't Destiny 1 anymore. If you're using a PC, you can plug in whichever input you prefer. And when Destiny 2 was released, many players that were using mouse and keyboard on console just moved to PC. Now, currently, Bungie still doesn't offer support for mouse and keyboard on consoles, but they have made it very clear that they do not want controller players matching with mouse and keyboard players unless they opt in for it. There was actually a bug in Season of the Plunder when it launched that allowed these pools to mix, which was actually fixed day one. I'm not gonna lie, we farmed the hell out of some controller players. Controller! Now, Bungie has remained pretty silent on this issue regarding XIMs and Cronus. A lot of the CMs going as far as to completely dodge the question about the products. And we can assume that any outside method used to matchmake with players on different input devices is frowned upon, because that's essentially what it would do. Using a XIM tricks the game into thinking you're using a controller, thus matching you with controller players. Now, this is possibly also backed up by the action they took against a streamer named Worthy back in 2020 who admitted to using XIM. So Demetrius actually made an entire video on this whole issue, but since Bungie did not share the reason for the ban, we don't really know if other hacks or game exploits were used in combination with the XIM, which resulted in his ban. Now, we've already seen some arguments to the reason why people use Cronus and XIM, and I wanted us to take a look at some of these defenses. I use Cronus so I can use old controllers with new games. Now, this may be one of the best arguments defending the use of devices. It's very common for each new console generation to require you to use a new controller, and there are plenty of people who do not like the new design for Microsoft and PlayStation controllers, especially if you have a modded controller, even if it's like a scuff. Now, on PC, we obviously have software solutions to these issues. You can download things like DS4, use a PlayStation controller or anything else on PC, and of course, you have compatibility with things like Xbox controllers. But what about people who use Cronus or XIM for accessibility reasons? Oh boy, we've seen this all over over Twitter, and this has been the recurring defense for years. Now, obviously, we take the issue of accessibility very seriously. We want everyone to be able to play games, but we actually reached out to some people in the Destiny community who actually struggle with disabilities to better understand the challenges that they face and get their opinions on the usage of these devices. These are their comments. Hello, I'm Trey and Mandy, and my disability is quadriplegia caused by my onset of transverse myelitis in March 2016. I became disabled by what is best described as random chance. Initially, I was fully paralyzed from the neck down, and since my recovery, I can now function in a powered wheelchair. What does this mean for my ability to game? For one, I can't feel or move my fingers. There's a barely visible twitch count. This is the major point of impact for my gaming ability. But despite this, I've played D1 and D2 since launch, with a small break between D1 and D2. Being near the verge of death is a little time consuming. I use your basic Xbox joystick with no modifications. Year 1 was a struggle of a lifetime in D2, but I love the game and I struggled to make it mine. Now I can proudly say I'm one of the few with an impairment such as mine that has completed difficult activities such as raids, GMs, and trials. I've only been flawless once, kinda a hard carry, but my KD is a 1.2 now. Obviously the game is hard as hell to play, and before keybinds, it was way worse. And honestly, there are things I can't do. Will I ever be the best or have the ability to do all the things my peers can? No, but I can confidently say I'm better than average. Things like slide, shotgunning, most sniping, and multitasking, rotating, moving, and shooting at the same time are simply out of my reach. I do try to challenge these limits via keybinds and strategy, but as of now, these examples are just too much. As for XIM and Cronus, to be completely honest, I'm just now being made aware of these. And to summarize, my opinions are mixed. After some research, while there are good points on both sides, the ability to negate recoil, create macros, motion aim, and other such things are blatantly not okay. I also feel this way about mouse and keyboard support on consoles. They were separated in crossplay for a reason. In a game like D2, where Bungie specifically fine-tunes weapons between mouse and keyboard and controller, such as DMT and Last Word, I hope it can be stated that there are inherent advantages between both input devices without much contention. I also believe that using the advantages of mouse and keyboard on a console against other players can be considered cheating. We console players don't like PC lobbies for a reason. To those obviously using accessibility as an excuse to cheat, I cannot describe the rage I feel. I can't even get out of bed without being carried, and then I'm put in a wheelchair that I require just to go to another room. I have a real accessibility need. Is my case on the extreme end? Yes. Are there less impactful disabilities that do require accessibility related devices? Absolutely. But if you try to slate yourself as needing accommodations and you don't, you know exactly who you are, then my disgust for you is immeasurable. I'd rather you blatantly cheat and proudly proclaim it rather than try to use the difficulties that people like me face as an excuse to cheat. Can these devices be used for accessibility reasons? To a certain extent. If you have an adaptive controller setup that needs compatibility, then that's understandable. Using macros to completely eliminate recoil though, not so much. If you need something reasonable, that's fine, but there are other solutions than Cronus XIM that don't come with such heavy negative stigmas attached. Honestly, Trey has an incredible story, and it's an honor to even be able to share a part of it. He's expressed to us the Siegel Rare Neuroimmune Association, also known as the SRNA, which has been a transformative resource in his recovery process. So we've gone ahead and put a link to their website as well as a donation link in the description if you want to learn more about the work that they do. And of course, be a part of a life-changing thing for many people facing similar neurological related issues. Now, our second interview. This is from Moose. I have a physical deformity called amniotic band syndrome. This is the birth defect that occurs when bands of protein wrap around the fetus, cutting off vital nutrients to any developing tissues. Because of this, several fingers on both my right and left hand are undeveloped, missing several bones that would otherwise make up a normal hand. As for my thoughts on third-party converters such as the Cronus Max or the XIM, I believe there's little reason to use them. If you have to use a controller on PC, then 99% of the games nowadays have full controller support. Using these devices on a console breaks Xbox terms of service, and you shouldn't have mouse and keyboard on console in the first place. In my personal experience, I haven't met anyone that has a physical deformity or disability that claims they use these to help them. The only people I've seen use the accessibility argument are people without them who use these devices to give themselves an advantage in games. Bungie adding a full auto mod is a good accessibility change that makes a big difference. I know plenty of people who use controllers to compensate for this exact issue. However, no matter what Bungie adds to the game in the name of accessibility, people are always going to use it whether they have these challenges or not. That's just human nature. Even I use the full auto mod on Scouts just because it's simpler to use, even though I'm fully capable without it. And again, Bungie's eventually going to make that an accessibility thing and not an actual mod, which is good. Another point I want to make, as someone who faces some challenges, albeit not as difficult as some, I'm still an above average Crucible player. According to in-game stats, there are also many people that despite their disabilities, do things that are considered challenging without any restrictions. A man with no hands showed that he could hot swap slugs at the Templar and sword skate. Most people claiming we use these devices are clearly not playing with challenged people. First up, I just want to say say how humbling it is to get these thoughts from members in our community that really do have an uphill battle, yet they're still able to get in there, love the game, play it on the same playing field with the rest of us. By God, that's impressive. Once again, thank you both to Moose and Trey for sharing their disabilities and opinions on this topic. We didn't feel it would be right to broach the topic of accessibility without, of course, talking to people that we actually know so they can give their inputs on this issue. But I do want to be clear. If you have an actual disability and you use Cronus or XIM to assist with playing games, please leave a comment down below. We would really like to hear your opinions on this issue. But based on what we've seen and the testimonies you've heard, I can't comfortably take a stance to recommend the Cronus and XIM based on accessibility needs. And a big part of that alone is just the marketing surrounding these devices. If you were to go visit Cronus website, it is very obvious that they are marketing to an audience that is looking to gain an advantage over other players. The first thing you see when you open their website is a video thumbnail depicting how you can adjust the strength of your aim assist. That is the closest you can get to aimbot without actually using aimbot. And as we stated earlier, this is just one of the many features advertised that allows you to exploit game mechanics to gain an advantage over other players. The developers of Cronus are not trying to even the playing field. And if they ever try to hide behind the shield of accessibility to defend their devices, that is complete crap. They are in the business of profiting off of game exploits. If they really cared about accessibility, it would be plastered all over their marketing. And while we're on the subject, a good check I like to use whether something should be allowed as an accessibility feature is the question, should Bungie add a toggle for this in-game? Full auto mod is a perfect example of this. Yes, it allows people who don't need full auto to utilize it, but we already had that as a feature on some guns anyway. And it doesn't disrupt the combat experience. It doesn't change TTK values. It doesn't fluctuate aim assist. It just allows you to lay on the trigger of your weapon. But should Bungie add an in-game toggle so you can completely remove recoil from all your weapons? Obviously not. This would completely break weapon balancing in the game. And the same goes for aim assist and other macros that enhance your ability beyond what is naturally possible. Cronus is the exact same thing. It just has a $100 paywall that limits the use of these exploits to cheaters who gladly sacrifice their wallets to gain an upper hand in game. To show you the scale of what we're talking about here, we've pulled a statement that was released in 2020 that gives us some insight into how many orders they've shipped over the years. 145,265 were shipped as of October 2020, and that number I'm sure is much higher now. They sold so many they couldn't keep up with production and set up pre-orders while they caught up with demand. Do you really believe all of these buyers are planning to use them so they can connect different controllers between consoles and help with accessibility? Because I don't. I spent a lot of time on cheater forums watching the aftermath of massive ban waves, and one thing it has taught me is that cheaters will go to tremendous lengths to gain an advantage over others in multiplayer games. Now that Perfect Game and other sites are getting sued left and right, folks are desperate, and Cronus is the next best thing. Now, my argument against XIM. I really don't have that much to say about XIM. It's a pretty straightforward issue. Heavy aim assist on keyboard and mouse is outright unfair here. This is mostly just a repercussion of the method this device uses to accomplish a mouse and keyboard connection with controller-only games. While this device does solve an issue for many people on older games and allows you to do some cool modifications, like use a Wiimote, we don't need that on Destiny. If you're using a keyboard and mouse on console, then you should automatically be put in PC crossplay lobbies. Again, Bungie does not support keyboard and mouse on console at the time being outside of typing in text chats, so your options are PC or bus. Also, while we're talking about XIM, a quick word of advice. If you're going to advertise a precision aim controller and showcase Destiny footage while using it, how about you learn where Ravager's crit spot is? It's the lamp, not the head? And Darcy, really? Tell me you don't play Destiny without telling me you don't play Destiny. Overall, guys, these hardware devices are not marketed for folks with disabilities. They are purely marketed to give people an advantage. And anyone throwing up disabilities online, in my opinion, is just using that as a shield. There are games that allows for things like macros. Take Final Fantasy, for instance. You can do an entire macro system within the game, but there is a reason why Destiny doesn't allow macros. It breaks the balance in many ways, and I've seen it in RuneScape and others. You can literally click a button in RuneScape and all of a sudden you're swapping armor sets like mad. You're eating food at a rate that's inhuman, and there was a reason why the best PKers back in RS were also the best macro users. But these devices take it to another level. It's not just a sequence of keystrokes that's being hit in a single second. It's the outright removal of aspects that bring balance to the sandbox. When you can remove recoil, when you can amplify aim assist, when you can grant aim assist to mouse and keyboard, which is already very precise as it is, these are all clear advantages that truly break shooter games. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Big shout out to the editing squad for pulling all their information on this one. This was a deep dive, and much love to Moose and Trey and everyone who is able to game despite their challenges. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.